Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Cognitive Recalibration Podcast. As always, I'm your host Shravan. We've got Taran here with us.
Hey everyone.
Welcome back to part 2 of this Christopher Nolan series that we're doing. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about Insomnia and The Prestige. So these are his two sort of middle movies that when he started to venture into studio production films. If you're interested in his earlier works, we did do a part 1 of this series. So check that out in our podcast stream. All right, so we're up to Insomnia.
Yes.
This is another one that you haven't seen.
No, I haven't.
So I watched it recently. This movie is actually really hard to come by because it's not on any streaming service anywhere in the world as far as I know, because I looked up what I can VPN and it wasn't anywhere. I think you either have to buy it on iTunes or you have to somehow find a Blu-ray, which was also pretty hard to come by. But luckily, I happen to have a version of this film, which I got many, many years back. So I managed to watch it. And I guess that's why you couldn't watch it, because it's pretty hard to find.
No.
Yeah.
I think I've seen videos of it on YouTube before. So I actually know what happens, and I know the story.
Okay.
But I've never seen the movie to its entirety.
Yeah, so it is a bit of a dark horse in his filmography because it's a little bit different, and there's reasons for that. So I'll give you a bit of background on the movie itself. So George Clooney and Steven Soderbergh are executive producers on this movie, and they had this project in development for quite a long time. So I think it was from 98. It was actually in development, and this is actually a remake of a Norwegian film of the same name, Insomnia, that came out in 1997. So that's one of the reasons why I guess it's a little bit different to Nolan's other movies, because it's not his own story. It is a remake of another movie. So he didn't have as much creative control over this movie as some of his other ones. So what it's about a detective that's investigating a murder of a young woman in an isolated town that's so far north that the sun doesn't set for several days in some parts of the year. So the Norwegian movie was obviously in Norway, where they do experience this phenomenon where the sun doesn't set during the summer. This particular movie is set in Alaska. Again, so far up north that they do experience this. But where it was actually shot was not in Alaska. It was shot in Canada, in British Columbia. That has a similar landscape, I guess, to Alaska. The main sort of critical point of this movie is this particular detective, who's played by Al Pacino, comes with his partner to this town to investigate this murder. But back in Los Angeles, where they're from, Internal Affairs is investigating one of his previous cases, and they think there could be something that happened that he was involved in that happened, and they're investigating that. That's sort of the backdrop for it, and that kind of plays into some of the conflict that arises in this movie. So the cast in this film is pretty good, considering this is Nolan's third movie. He's got Al Pacino, Hillary Swank, and Robin Williams, all Academy Award winners in this movie. I guess that's also because this is a big studio film. Warner Brothers is behind it, so they could get some good actors to work in it. Back to the story. So what happens is this cop can't get to sleep because it's sunny all the time. So that leads to, they do have a confrontation with the suspected criminal the suspected murderer.
Robin Williams, isn't it?
Yeah, so you only find out that it's Robin Williams really late into the movie. It's like more than an hour into the movie. So they're chasing this guy, and they find this secluded hut at the edge of this town where he's supposedly staying. And they go and try to confront him, and he runs into the woods. And there's a lot of fog in this area, and this cop Al Pacino ends up shooting his partner But what happens the night before is his partner says that he's going to basically tell internal affairs about what happened in a previous case to get immunity. And obviously Al Pacino is not very happy about that. He shoots his partner, and when you first watch it, it looks like it's because he couldn't see him and he thought it was the criminal and he shot. But as the movie progresses and he gets more and more sleep deprived, he starts to question his own motives as to maybe he did actually see him and he kind of did it on
Shot him
purpose.
anyway.
Yeah, that starts to play into the movie. And then this cop starts to become more and more of a criminal because he starts to cover up his own acts. So Hillary Swank, who actually idolizes Al Pacino's character, she starts investigating this case, the murder, well, the killing of his partner, because what Al Pacino tells the cops is that he was shot by the murderer. But she finds out that it couldn't have been the murderer from the angle which he was shot, and the only person that was at that angle was Al Pacino. So she starts to question him, not openly, but in her own mind, she starts kind of figuring things out. Meanwhile, Robin Williams' character, he sees that Al Pacino shot his partner, so he has that leverage over him. Al Pacino can't, he figures out that it is Robin Williams, so he finds out that it is this author that lives in the town, which is Robin Williams' character. And they end up talking to each other. They even meet each other, but because Al Pacino doesn't want to get found out, he doesn't let Robin Williams get found out either, so it's kind of this interplay. It is kind of like a typical Nolan twist. You find out that Al Pacino, in one of his previous cases, he plants, spoilers here, so if you haven't seen this movie, this is spoilers, so you're being warned. You find out that Al Pacino planted some evidence in one of his previous cases on a murder investigation, because he knew that this particular suspect was the murderer, but they didn't have any conclusive evidence to suggest that he was. In his heart, he knew that it was, so he purposely gets the blood of the murder victim and places it on, I think it's the suspect's shirt or something, or he pretty much plants the evidence somewhere, and they use that to arrest that suspect and put him in jail. At the very end of the movie, he says that, and Hillary Swank also finds out that this was the case. This is what happened in that case, because she studied that case when she was training to become a policeman. And at the end of the movie, you see Hillary Swank confront Al Pacino, saying that, you know, this is what you've done, but she doesn't want him to get arrested for the killing of his partner. So she's about to throw away the bullet that she finds that was fired from his gun, but he tells her not to do it. So he says, don't lose your way and become like me. And he, at that stage anyway, he had been shot by Robin Williams, so he was about to die anyway. Basically, at the end of the movie, he dies, Robin Williams dies, and Hillary Swank lives, but she knows the truth about everything. So that's a quick summary of the movie.
My question is, why doesn't he just close the curtains when he goes to sleep?
So he does, but they don't have very good curtains in this hotel that he's staying in. So it still like comes out through the side of the curtains. And at one stage in the movie, he starts putting all this furniture against the wall, against the curtains, so the light doesn't seep through, but it doesn't help. And I think the insomnia that he's got, it's not all because of the light, it's because of all the guilt that he has. I think that's kind of implied. So it's not just because it's too bright in the room.
Yeah. Okay. I had to ask.
It was so this movie, I'm a bit split on it, because I did enjoy it, but it's very slow, and it's very much dialogue driven. So there's not much action as such. So there's not much happening on the screen. The dialogue is good, but it is quite slow, and it is a slow burn compared to his other movies. And I guess it is one of the most straightforward of his movies. So there isn't like anything too complex, or the way it's told as well. It's not non-linear or anything like that. It's all in one line. There's nothing too crazy about it. Like I said before, so he's got 3 Oscar-winning actors in this movie. So I did some research, and I had to look at, throughout all these movies, how many Oscar-winning actors or actresses have been in his movies.
Lots and lots.
If you had to guess.
The lead actor in all these movies has won an Oscar, I'm pretty sure. In all of them, I'm pretty sure the lead actors won an Oscar, either before or after.
Yeah, either
or been
before
at
or
least
after.
nominated.
Yeah. So, well, Guy Pearce hasn't. Okay, so Al Pacino has.
Robin Williams has been nominated at least.
No,
I think.
he's won. So he's a winner.
Hillary Swank's
Won twice. Yeah.
Hugh Jackman, no.
No.
I'm guessing.
Christian Bale has.
Christian Bale has. Scarlett Johansson?
No.
Nah.
She's been nominated but hasn't won.
Michael Caine?
Michael Caine has 2.
Leo
Matthew McConaughey.
and Hathaway?
Yep.
Has Kenneth Branagh won an Oscar?
I thought he would have, but he actually hasn't. He's been nominated a lot of times, but he hasn't won an Oscar.
Okay.
But there is a person in Dunkirk that has won an Oscar.
Harry Styles for music? No, I don't know. I can't remember the other actors in Dunkirk.
So all up, I counted throughout all these movies. So he's done 10 movies, and out of the 10 movies, 15. There have been 15 actors that have won at least one Oscar in all of his movies. So the ones we've mentioned already. So Al Pacino's won 1, Robin Williams has won 1, Hillary Swank's won 2, Christian Bale is won 1, Michael Caine's won 2. One we missed is Gary Oldman. He's won 1.
Oh, yeah.
Morgan Freeman has won 1. Heath Ledger, obviously. Anne Hathaway. Marion Cotillard has won 1. Leonardo DiCaprio. Matthew McConaughey. One we missed, and a lot of people will probably miss as well, is Matt Damon. He didn't win it for acting, but he won it for screenplay. But he's in Interstellar.
Yeah.
Another one that a lot of people miss, and they forget that he's even in this movie, is Casey Affleck. He was in Interstellar, and he's won.
Oh, yeah, he's his son, isn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah.
And the one I was mentioning in Dunkirk is Mark Rylance.
I know who that is.
He's the guy on the boat with the 2 kids.
Oh, okay. Is that guy famous? I thought this was like his first movie.
Well, he's won an Oscar. He won an Oscar for Bridge of Spies.
Oh, never seen it.
So you get some good actors in his movies. So they either win awards before or after doing his movies. A couple more trivia questions on this. As of 2017, or as of now actually, this is the only film directed by Christopher Nolan, which Nolan does not have the official writing credit. This is the only remake that he's done. Will Dormer, which is Al Pacino's name in this movie, dormir is the French, Spanish, and Portuguese word dormir, means to sleep. So it's kind of derived from that. Harrison Ford was considered to play the title role, or the protagonist role, before Al Pacino got it. And this is Nolan's only film post-2000 that has not been nominated for any awards. The other thing is, this is his first movie that is not in black and white, or does not have parts in black and white.
Does not have black and white.
And, I've got it here. Robin Williams does not appear until 61 minutes into the film.
Okay, fair way in.
In one of his interviews, when he was talking about Al Pacino, he would say Al Pacino would ask for multiple takes of scenes, so he'd just do different versions of the scenes on his own, pretty much, and he'd vary his energy levels throughout each take, and then Nolan would pick which one was most suitable. So he'd do like 10 to 12 takes of every scene. So that's a lot of film. But yeah, that's how Al Pacino works. He does heaps of takes. He said all the takes were perfect. It's just that he just wanted to explore the character further, so he'd just do it on his own.
Want to try a couple things.
Apparently that's what RDJ does too.
RDJ? I hear RDJ just gets his lines fed through an earpiece. Have you heard this?
No.
This is true, actually. In all the Marvel movies, he doesn't memorize his lines because he wants to spend more time with his family, so he doesn't want to spend time memorizing lines. So in each movie, he's got an earpiece, like in a small one, so no one can see it, and
someone tells him
feed the line. Someone tells him the line, and then he says it.
But he doesn't even say the lines exactly. I'm pretty sure he improvises.
No, and then he ad libs on top of it.
Yeah.
So they say something, and then he says that or ad libs on top of it. But he doesn't memorize scripts.
Well, fair enough, and he gets paid more than any other actor as well. It's good life.
You can't tell when you watch the movie though, but yeah, fair enough.
Elements of filmmaking in this movie. If you're joining us for this episode before seeing part 1, basically I've kind of identified some trends or techniques that I see in most of Nolan's films, and I try to point them out with an example. So in this movie, have you ever noticed in all of his movies he does sometimes have these really close-up shots of actors, like literally just their face?
M. Night Shyamalan style.
Yeah, so he does that in this movie as well, where there's a scene where Al Pacino's on the phone and it's literally just his face. But when you see the making of that scene, you'd think that they'd just use like a zoom, right? But the camera was literally like a ruler in front of him, like 30 centimeters in front of him. That's how close the camera was. And apparently he does that because it makes the actors more aware and it brings out a better performance. After this film, Nolan was going to make a movie about Howard Hughes. So Howard Hughes being the American investor.
Did they make a movie?
Yes, that's the reason he didn't make it. So
the Leonardo DiCaprio one.
Yeah, so he was
what's it called?
He was planning to make a movie about this, but then Martin Scorsese was making The Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio, which was about Howard Hughes. So he backed out of it. So apparently they already started some of the development for this movie. So he wanted Jim Carrey in the title role.
Interesting choice.
But obviously it didn't go ahead. So once he found out that Martin Scorsese was doing it, he backed out. And it was around this time that he found out that Warner Brothers were planning to get back into Batman and start making Batman again. This was 6 years after Batman and Robin. There were different interpretations of the character at that time in the studio. So one version of it was a continuation of the same timeline, of the same Batman and Robin timeline. And there were different directors that wanted to...
Batman Triumphant.
Yes, yeah. So Batman Triumphant, they still had that script and they wanted to do that. And I think at that stage, so this would have been 2002, 2003, the only other franchise that Warner Bros. Had, which was arguably bigger than anything that DC had, was probably Harry Potter. We all know what happened with Batman Begins, so it was a big success, and we'll talk about that in more detail in another episode. But if you fast...
We've already talked about it in detail in Origins episode.
We did, yeah.
If you want to listen to that, yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to... We did talk about it in that, you're right. So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, have a look at our Origins episode, which is an orange episode. Yes, it is.
We colour all our episodes in case you didn't know.
We colour code them, yeah.
Yeah, we colour code them, yeah.
Okay. Let's fast forward 4 years. So this is after Batman Begins. Prestige. So this movie came out in 2006. Only a year after Batman Begins. Pretty short turnover. This movie was actually in development since Memento. It would have actually been his next film. So after he gave up on the idea of the Howard Hughes film, and before he found out about Batman, he was actually planning to make this movie. And the reason he had this in development for so long was because the author of the original Prestige novel, Christopher Priest, actually selected Jonathan and Christopher Nolan to make this movie. So he was handpicked by the author to do the adaptation of this. Christopher Priest actually chose them to do this movie before Memento was even released. So it was actually after watching Following that he chose them to make this movie. So Prestige, this is another pretty deep film. So there's a lot happening in this again. Cast-wise, again, you got a good cast. So you got Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine for the second time. So Michael Caine appeared for the first time in Batman Begins and he's appeared in every movie since then. I believe in Dunkirk.
Except Dunkirk.
I think he's a voiceover in Dunkirk. Apparently. Okay. But he's not in it. Yeah. Yep. He's in Tenet though. Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, Andy Serkis is in this as well, and David Bowie.
Who are they?
Andy Serkis is the guy...
Oh no, you said Andy Serkis. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the second name you said?
David Bowie.
Oh, David Bowie. Yeah. Okay. I know both those people. I just didn't hear you say their names, so I didn't know who they were. I know who they both are, yeah. And Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman, did you say those two?
Yeah, I said them first.
Okay, yes. I obviously just wasn't listening.
I guess there's a lot to talk about in this. We can start with, I've seen this 3 times now. I guess the first time I was genuinely surprised with the twist. Because I didn't see it. But the second time when you know the twist...
Which twist? There's like 2 of them. Or like more than 2.
So the main, yeah, you're right. The twist with Christian Bale and his twin brother.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Spoilers.
Okay, yeah. Spoilers for this movie that came out in 2006. If you haven't seen it, then watch
there's like a statue of...
Watch all of these movies and then come listen to these because they're all good. Spoilers for the reviews.
Yeah, there's probably a statute of... What's it called? Like after a certain period of time, you don't have to say spoilers, I reckon.
Yeah, like, I reckon...
Like 10 years?
Yeah, definitely 10 years.
10 years is...
Yeah.
10 years is giving you a lot of time.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it in 10 years, you're never going to watch it. Don't bother.
Yeah. Where do we want to start? I guess we can talk about Christian Bale's character first. So Christian Bale, in this movie, he's got a twin brother, and that's how he's doing the transporter man trick throughout. But Hugh Jackman, I guess we should probably...
Jackman's like, how the hell is he doing this trick?
Yeah, I guess we should probably explain what it's about as well. So it's about
the movie is about magicians.
It's about two magicians that are dueling to perform this trick called the transporter man trick.
They used to be friends, but now they're not.
Yeah, so they both used to work for Michael Caine. So Michael Caine is also a magician, and he taught them most of their tricks, so they're kind of his apprentices. And then a certain incident happens where Hugh Jackman's wife, I think, right? She ends up dying in one of the tricks.
His wife, yeah.
And that kind of creates this feud between the two, and they start doing their own practices. Back to the transporter man trick.
So Christian Bale has a twin brother, and the trick is like there's two doors, and he goes through one door, and then he appears at the other door. But Christian Bale has two of him, so one of them stands at the other door, and the other one goes through the door, and he drops down like a trapdoor or whatever. And then the other one appears, basically.
That's right.
And then Hugh Jackman's like, how's this possible?
Yeah, and he
gets obsessed with it.
He gets obsessed with it, and he doesn't want to believe that it is as simple as just having a double. For some reason, he doesn't think it's that.
He feels like it's like real magic or something. It's like this guy somehow figured out how to really do magic.
And then throughout the film, they're basically sabotaging each other's acts. So Hugh Jackman basically shoots Christian Bale at one point, because that's one of his tricks where he catches the bullet. And then Christian Bale
like grievously injures one of Hugh Jackman's audience members.
Yes.
It doesn't even affect Hugh Jackman. He just like splices the audience member's hands.
So throughout the movie, they're kind of competing, and at one stage,
Hugh Jackman sees Nikola Tesla.
Yes, and he ends up getting something that's real magic, sort of. Like it kind of duplicates your body, or
I guess.
I'm not sure exactly
it's like
how
a cloning
it works.
procedure.
Yeah, so
It's never explained.
Basically clones you, and he uses that as his technique. But what happens, and this you see this in all of his movies, where the starting of the movie is the ending of the movie, so it's kind of starts where it ends. So you see at the start that Christian Bale witnesses Hugh Jackman basically dying from this trick, and he tries to help him, but in the process they think that he was involved in that murder, and Christian Bale ends up getting arrested and convicted, and Hugh Jackman is actually alive because he used that technology from Nikola Tesla to make a clone of himself.
But then he dies anyway.
Does he?
Doesn't he? Doesn't the other Christian Bale go and shoot him or something?
Yeah, he does. But then the very last shot of the movie, don't you see Hugh Jackman in like a case or something?
I thought that's him drowning, isn't it?
Yeah, it might just be a dead version of him. I guess he's dead. He must be one of his previous clones.
I haven't seen this in a long time, but from what I remember, one of the Christian Bales is like an aggro guy, and he goes to jail. Then the other Christian Bale goes and kills Hugh Jackman, and then does Christian Bale have a kid?
Yeah, so he's got a daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he lives with his daughter and Rebecca Hall.
No, Rebecca Hall dies because she commits suicide.
Or is it Scarlett Johansson that he lives with?
Nah, Scarlett Johansson just, I don't know what she does.
Okay, no, so then he lives with his daughter or something. Is that what happens?
I think so, yeah. So
we should call this episode Guy Reviews Movie He Barely Remembers.
I think it is his, no, it's not his daughter actually. I think
it's someone's daughter.
No, it's his daughter. It's Christian Bale's daughter, but the one that survives is not her father. It's her uncle, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Because there's two of them, and that's why Rebecca Hall's character, throughout the movie, she does say that whenever Christian Bale says that he loves her, she says whether he actually means it or not. And that's because sometimes it's his twin that's saying it, and sometimes it's him that's saying it. So I think she was actually the closest out of anyone to figuring out what was actually happening. And there's a line in the movie where this was before the feud happens, where Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman go to watch another magician's show. This Asian magician looks very, very old. He looks like 80 to 100 years old.
That's actually a real bloke.
It is, yeah. It's in my trivia.
Yeah.
It's a real bloke, but apparently the whole act was that, firstly, he wasn't even Asian. Apparently he was a white guy.
Yeah. It's a white bloke, yeah.
Dressed as an Asian, and he wasn't anywhere near as old as that. But whenever he was in public, he would always dress up as that person and always act as if he was that person. So that was the actual magic trick in a sense. So he was always dedicated to that magic trick. I think there's a line in the movie where he says, "This is the trick, this is the performance, this is why no one can detect his method, total devotion to his art." He says that about that magician, but he kind of applies the same principle to his own life as well. And pretty much no one knows, even his own wife doesn't know.
So my question is, when did they start this game? Well, first off, did he always know he was going to do this trick? And so he hid himself, he hid one of the twins, or both the twins are like, okay, we're going to act like one person. And when did they start? Like, did they start when they were like 2 years old? Or like 1 year old? And they're like, oh, we're going to do this trick when we're older, so we're going to act like one person?
I think when he was working with Michael Caine and Hugh Jackman, it must have just been one of them. I don't think it was both of them. I think it was only after they split and they wanted to do this transporter man trick, that's when his brother got involved.
Well, the theory is that the reason that Hugh Jackman's wife dies is that one of the guys is the one to say which knot he wanted to do, and then the other twin is the one that actually does the knot, and he does a different knot, and the wife can't get out of that knot because he did the wrong knot, and that's why she dies.
It could be that, but the wife wanted to do it with that knot as well.
No, but he does a different knot because he wasn't in on the conversation.
Oh, okay, so he does a completely different knot.
He does a completely different knot because he wasn't there.
Yeah, that could be true, because when Hugh Jackman confronts him later and he asks him which knot he did, he can't answer that question. Maybe because it was the other brother that did it. So maybe he was doing it for a very long time.
Yeah, so at what point did he start this? And how did he know he was going to do this trick?
That's good. That's a good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the book.
So that's my groundbreaking element for this movie.
The other thing is, so Christopher Nolan, he tends to put in, this is the first of a couple of his movies where the whole movie is a bit of a metaphor for filmmaking in general. So this movie, in the very first scene of the movie, they explain the 3 stages of a magic trick. So it's the pledge, the turn, and the prestige. So the pledge being you present the audience with a normal object, and that's kind of like the first act of a movie where you introduce the audience to the characters. Nothing much happens. It's mostly just introductions. And then the turn is when you're presented, what you presented in the pledge disappears. So you do something with what is presented in the pledge. Similarly, in Act 2, something happens with the characters and they're presented with some sort of problem. And then the prestige is when you can't just make the object disappear, you have to make it reappear. And similarly, in Act 3 of a film, you get some sort of resolution and some sort of return to the status quo. So something gets back to normal. So it's kind of a metaphor for filmmaking overall. And in this movie, he kind of plays a magic trick on the audience in a sense, because the second time you watch it, you realize that a lot of the clues are just like right there in front of you, especially the twin stuff, because there's a part where...
because it's just Christian Bale. It's just Christian Bale in makeup.
Yeah, and you can you can tell that it's him, especially after you know that it's him.
Yeah.
And there's other parts where that kind of telegraph it too, because there's a part where he does a magic trick with a bird, with Rebecca Hall's nephew, I think, and he makes the bird disappear and he makes a bird reappear. But the boy that was with Rebecca Hall, he says, "Where did the brother go?" Meaning that the other bird died and he got a new bird. So it's kind of already foreshadowed in that.
Which is what Hugh Jackman does.
Yes.
He keeps killing himself. My other game-breaking element in this movie has 2. Why doesn't Hugh Jackman just have a conversation with his clone and be like, dude, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this trick and we can swap it each night or whatever.
Is it because...
Instead of killing his clone every night.
Does he kill his clone or does he kill himself?
I don't know. Someone dies every night, but someone didn't need to die every night. both stayed alive.
Because isn't it that his memories are... Well, I don't know how this works because it's never really explained in the movie, but his memories transfer to the new body and the other one doesn't have that, like doesn't remember it.
The other one doesn't have memories.
Yeah, well, when they the first thing they remember is they're drowning or they're dying. So I don't know if they're...
The first thing they remember is that they're drowning.
Because he does the trick, right? And then he falls into like water and he starts drowning.
And then drowns. Yeah.
And the other one appears, right? And the other one appears to remember everything.
When he does the trick, he clones himself as he's doing the trick.
Yes. But I think his consciousness... this could be wrong. Maybe both of them have all the memories and both of them can actually function as different people. But I think...
Yeah.
Maybe his consciousness is taken to the new body and his existing one is just a body and he just dies.
I didn't get that from it, but maybe you're right.
Yeah. Well,
I thought he was just killing himself because he wanted to have the spotlight.
Have only one version of himself.
Yeah.
But then every night he did the trick, he would just get another version of himself. And they'd just be like, every night there'd be another version of himself. So he'd just be multiplying the number of Hugh Jackmans.
Why does he have to use a cloning machine every night, though? If you have another version of yourself, you can do the trick without the cloning machine.
Well, the other thing was that the reason he didn't like using... Because at one stage he does actually use a double.
Yeah.
But the reason he doesn't like using it is because when he does the trick, he's not on stage and it's the other one that's on stage and he gets the applause and maybe that's why. So he wants both. Okay. I think that's the reason he pursues this technique as well, because he wants the glory. He doesn't want...
He wants to be the guy doing the trick and also the guy that gets the applause.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. He's a psychopath. It's just a magic trick, man.
Some trivia. So you've already mentioned one of these. So Chung Ling Soo was a stage character created by William Ellsworth Robinson, a white man who disguised himself as a Chinese man to cash in on audiences' enthusiasm for the exotic. Robinson lived as Chung,
cultural appropriation.
Robinson lived as Chung, never breaking character while in public. He died on March 1918 while a bullet catch trick went wrong. "My God, I've been shot" were his last words and the first English he had spoken on stage in 19 years.
Cultural appropriation at its finest.
The word prestige originally meant a trick from the Latin word prestigium, meaning illusion. What a lot of people don't know is that Sam Mendes was actually going to direct this film before Christopher Priest finalized Christopher Nolan. So he actually did finalize Sam Mendes, but then he got a VHS copy of Following delivered to him and he watched it and then he changed his mind and Sam Mendes didn't get the job. This was Christopher Nolan's lowest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes at 76% until Interstellar came out. And David Bowie initially declined the role of Nikola Tesla when it was offered to him, but Christopher Nolan flew out to him personally and told him that he was the only person he imagined for the role and that his larger-than-life persona would only make the role better. Well, here's something from the novel that might help us figure out what's happening with Hugh Jackman. So in the novel, the machine works a bit differently than in the film. It doesn't copy a person exactly as they are, memories and personality intact, 50 to 100 meters away from the device's location. Instead, it does, in fact, transport the essence of the person into a newly created body, leaving behind a seemingly dead husk. These dead husks are what Angier refers to as the prestige materials in the novels. So in the novel, it is what I said.
In the novel, it's what you said.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it's what I said.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I guess we solved that.
But I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. He wanted to be both the guy that gets the applause and the guy that does the trick, which is why he did just use the double.
Elements of his filmmaking. So in this one, the key thing that I found, and throughout all these movies this is true as well, is that he understands his target audience. So he doesn't ever dumb down his movies. So instead he kind of tries to complement the audience's intelligence rather than assume that they don't have any intelligence like some movies do. A lot of his movies are what I call intelligent blockbusters. So they're not your typical blockbusters. They do make you think a bit and they do challenge your intelligence. And the other technique that he uses quite often is bookending. So this is where the beginning and the end share something in common. Sometimes it's dialogue. Sometimes it's like the scene is exactly the same. So in this movie, it is dialogue because you get that the explanation of the Prestige. All right, so that brings us... Do you have anything else to say about Prestige?
No, but I like this movie. I think it's my favourite Oh, no, it's not. No, it's one of my favourite Christopher Nolan movies. It's not my most favourite, but it's probably one of the best ones.
For me, I really do like this movie as well, but for me, I feel like on repeat viewings, it's not as impactful because a lot of it is in the mystery around how the tricks are performed and the twists. But once you know them, it's not as... There's still layers to it, but it's not as impactful as some of his other movies.
I don't really repeat watch most of Christopher Nolan's movies, though.
So, interesting thing is, he wants people to repeat watch his movies because he purposefully makes them complex and adds layers of complexity so that people notice things that they hadn't noticed in previous viewings. Yeah, so that's something he does on purpose.
Well, try harder, Christopher Nolan. You haven't got me yet.
Yeah, and this is actually, interestingly, one of his, like I mentioned earlier, it's one of his lowest critically rated films, but it's also one of his highest audience rated films. So there is a bit of polarity there. But I don't know anyone who doesn't like this movie. All right, so I guess that brings us to the end of this middle episode on Christopher Nolan's filmography. If people want to get in touch with us and tell us about their theories on Prestige, how do they go about it?
They can contact us on Facebook and Instagram at Cognitive Recalibration. Email is cognitiverecalibrationpodcast@gmail.com, and our Twitter handle is @CRecalibration.
Yes, and if you want to support the podcast, you can do so by many means. So one is just give us a review on iTunes and Spotify. If you want to support us financially as well, we've got Amazon affiliate links that you can purchase whatever you want through Amazon, and we get a bit of a kickback. We also have Buy Me a Coffee, where you can give us a small donation, which we'll use to further develop the podcast. Next episode, part 3, we'll be talking about, I guess, his heavier films, in a way. Inception, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. So a lot to talk about in that episode, his more modern films. Look forward to talking about that. But till then, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.
Until next time, see ya.